All right, so my name is Cwamne Howard, and I am here with Phillip Kuoch and Thomas Pan.
Hello.
Hi, how you going?
All the way from Australia. I hope you can understand our accent.
Well, first off, did I butcher your last name, Phillip?
Nah, you got it perfectly right.
Actually,
but mine's easy. I think you got yours.
No,
as
you
well.
actually aced it. Most people don't get it right, so you did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, I do hear it, on Lemon, so.
Yes, you actually
All right, and speaking of the podcast, and some of the readers down at Kcrush America might not know the podcast, so what is Lemon?
Well, to summarize it, I guess Lemon is a podcast for Asian millennials. We really wanted to make a podcast for Asian millennials, so we talk a lot about pop culture. We love to talk about, I guess, like what's happening in K-pop, what's happening in pop culture in general. But we also talk a lot about, social issues that are affecting Asian millennials. So yeah, we're really passionate about those topics.
All right, so speaking of pop culture, what are you guys watching and listening to?
Well, watching and listening, Lady Gaga's Chromatica album just came out yesterday, so I'm super, super, super excited about that. I've been listening to that back to back ever since yesterday. Stoked about Blackpink's collab as well, Sour Candy.
So good.
Great song. But watching-wise, I've been watching Schitt's Creek, which is a Canadian Netflix TV show, I believe. That's been keeping me going during ISO. And what about for you?
Oh, I'm going through like a massive K-drama phase again. I dip in and out of K-drama a lot, but oh my god, there's so many good Korean dramas out right now. So I just finished Crash Landing on You because Hyunbin was like my childhood crush. So I just finished that. And then I watched after that, it was It's Taiwan Class. That was another amazing drama about, running a business. So I was really interested in that. And then the other one I just really watched just finished recently was World of Married, which is, as you know, the biggest K-drama at the moment in Korea right now. So that was an amazing drama about marriage life. So yeah, those are my recommendations, I guess.
Wow. Very Korean.
Very Korean, yeah.
All right, so another fun question. Can any of you guys cook?
I think Tom's a really good cook, actually.
I wouldn't say great cook. Like, I can whip up something real fast if I'm hungry. I can boil some water. I can turn on the oven. But
you know what? But Tom's the master of like improvised cooking. Like if you just give him just tell him what's in your fridge, he can whip up a dish. And it'll be pretty
edible.
Good. No,
it's
really,
edible.
really edible.
Oh, thanks.
But me, on the other hand, one day, the other time when we were recording the podcast, Tom came over. I tried to cook him steak, and it was like really burnt steak.
Oh, it was still edible. I mean, food is food. You just ingest it. So
I tried to also make it like a lemon peppery steak, and I put too much lemon and too much pepper.
Too much, yeah.
But yeah, I think out of two of us, I think Tom is the better cook.
What do you normally cook though?
I'm getting better at cooking now. I've been cooking a lot of not at the moment, but I was cooking a lot of healthy meal prep food. I think I did a pretty good job meal prepping.
And also, Phil owns his own kind of donut shop. He bakes a lot, hell of a lot.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a baker, but yeah, I can bake a few things.
All right, so another one. Do any of you, and I think you guys were discussing this earlier as to who would answer it, do any of you have a funny dating story?
I have not a dating story, but I can tell you that I probably have the record for the world's shortest dates.
Wait, what happened?
So one time I went on a date, and it was super awkward. It was just like I had nothing in common with that person. But we decided to have sushi train anyway. So we went to meet up for sushi train, and I was trying to make conversation. I'd ask him, where are you born? Like, not where are you born, but like, where do you live? And trying to, get conversation out of him. And I was only getting like one-worded answers. So that date lasted about 10 minutes. It was literally just in there. And how sushi train's like on the spot, so you can just eat it. So, we had a few plates of sushi train. It was 10 minutes. And then after that, we're just like, oh, well, usually we'll like, I'll try to go somewhere else. But with this one, we're just like, well, which way are you heading?
10 minutes of sushi train, and that was it.
That was literally it.
What? Was it even like any follow-up? Like,
nope.
No messages, no
no
texting.
nothing, no messages.
Just blocked and ghosted.
Yeah. So I mean, like halfway through that 10-minute date, I was just like, this date is obviously not going to go anywhere. So I just stopped asking questions and just had my lunch and just that was it.
Do you guys have sushi train in the States? You guys do, right?
I'm not sure if we have one, but of course, there are a lot of sushi places, and I do like having sushi from time to time.
Oh, yum.
Well, I don't know why. I didn't know they didn't have sushi train. I thought everyone had sushi train.
Yeah, I thought sushi train was like an international thing. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not that big on sushi, so I'm pretty sure we might have it, but I've never heard of it. I don't think.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Well, I guess I'll be what I'll look up as soon as I'm done here and see if we have one. All right, so can you guys tell me about your background, upbringing, your childhood?
Yep.
You go first.
My background is I'm Malaysian Chinese, so that just means that my grandparents were from China that migrated to Malaysia. That was where my mum was born, and then my mum came to Australia at a very young age. My mum is a single mum, so my dad left when I was about 2 months old, and I guess growing up it was quite of a difficult situation because having just me, my sister, and my mum, financially it was quite hard, I guess, on my mum. But I guess everything else worked pretty much okay. I was studying oral health therapy, which is a sub-branch of dentistry at Melbourne University. Worked for about 2 years, and now I'm doing music.
My story. Okay, I'll try not to usually when people ask me this, I give them my whole life story.
It gets too long though.
So I'll try to give a summary. But basically, okay, where do I start? Okay. My dad came to Australia as a refugee. And then a few years later, he went back to Cambodia and then got married with my mum, and the mum got sponsored to come here. And then I came out of their procreation stuff. Too much TMI.
No, all good.
And then after that, and then I pretty much grew up in Australia. I was a first generation immigrant family in Australia. Grew up in government housing and stuff like that. And then tried, what do I do after that?
You went to high school, I don't know.
Went to high school and then had a K-pop blog for a while, similar to Kcrush. And then I started my own donut shop, which is a bit random. And then here I am doing podcasting as well.
Yeah, so I guess, both of you kind of have, very interesting journeys. Thomas, you went from being in a dental career to doing music, and, you went from doing a K-pop blog and running your family's
donut business.
And donut business out of nowhere.
Yeah, and you were still in college, right, at the time?
Me? You mean me? No, actually, I was in high school. I was 16, I think. Yeah, as a kid, when you're growing up, you like to try new things and you don't really know what your interests are. So I was really into writing. So I really wanted to start a blog. And at the same time, I was really interested in the K-pop. And there wasn't really many English K-pop blogs website updating about K-pop. So I was like, well, I know a lot about K-pop music, so why not start one? So I started one. And then, I did that. I'll do it after high school, after school. So after class, I go home and literally just be at my computer 6 hours a day after school, just typing away about K-pop, and sharing information with the world pretty much about K-pop.
Leading in from that, do you guys have any traditions or customs, or things that you do in your family that you hold very dear?
Ooh, good question. Tom?
I guess for me, because being in Asian culture, a lot of the things that we do normally revolves around food. So food's a big part in Asian culture. And I was thinking about this kind of question earlier, actually, and I think for me, not the best question because I break a lot of Asian kind of cultural rules, but for me, what I kind of hold closely to me is when we normally eat in Asian culture, we sit around a very big circular table and it's the lazy Susan. And when the food comes out, what we normally do is that what I kind of hold close is that you have to serve your elders first. So you have to kind of give them the food, like give your grandparents the food, give your mom the food first before you put food onto your own plates. So that is something that is a culture that's kind of close to me. On top of that as well, what we normally do when there's one piece of food left on every dish, it's in our culture, it's sign of respect to ask everybody first if they want the food before we eat it.
Oh, wow. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, a culture that is very close, a tradition that's very close to my heart, would probably be when I get red pocket money from my aunties and uncles during Chinese New Year. I love that celebration. It's my favorite celebration of the year.
It's because you just get money.
You get money, yeah. But also, what I really love about Chinese New Year and Lunar New Year is that it brings the family together. Like, everyone comes together and just celebrate, Chinese New Year and celebrate being a family together. And I just love the whole idea of family catching up and gathering and just being very, celebrating and stuff. So,
have you ever got a red pocket?
Actually, I did get one from one of my friends before.
Was there money inside?
I think it was just $1, but it was just like. But I mean,
that's nice.
Everything counts. Everything counts. Yeah.
Yeah,
no, usually when it comes to red pocket money, I have very high expectations because, I have very, very high expectations because my aunties and uncles are very generous with red pockets. So every year we evaluate their love. Joking, of course. Evaluate their love by how much money they give us.
But $1 US is still a lot though. Like, that's like $4 Australian.
I know. $1 US is like $4 Australian dollars. So that's heaps.
So what was the highest amount that you ever got? And
the highest amount.
I think you guys lost all the way. Phil comes from their red packets are like wow. For me, the most I ever get is I get $50 from my mom, which is a lot, and then I get $50 from my auntie, and altogether I probably have like $150, $200.
Yeah. For me, look, I think every family has like a rich aunt or uncle, so I think some people can relate at some point. But I do have an aunt who is very generous with her money. She usually would give us at least $300-400 in that red pocket.
My goodness!
But I think as the years, go by and we get older, she gives us less because like we can make our own money now. But yeah, that's why I love Chinese New Year because it's a good holiday.
And what we also do is
with money.
What we also do as well is like, when aunties give out money, like all the kids go back to their parents, right? And they kind of calculate how much you got. So you don't want to lose money, if that makes sense. You want your kids to either break even of how much you got from other aunties or get more.
You make your money back. Yeah.
Make your money back.
It's a very Asian thing.
It's very calculated.
It's like how, when my parents get invited to weddings by their friends, she would give them, like $100 or $200, for them to make up for the cost of having her there. But then when I get married, she's going to expect that money back all more.
So that friend who gave you the $1 USD, she's expecting to get something back.
Yeah, she's expecting to get that back.
That's likely a guy. But I think $1 is good. All right, so how did you guys come together to create Lemon, and why was it created?
Do you want me to answer this one? Well, I'm a big podcast listener. I love listening to podcasts, mainly because I'm always on the road driving. So I love how podcasts keeps me entertained and informed. But I've been trying to get Tom to do podcasting for the longest time because he's the only person I know that is deep rooted into that pop culture news. So initially when we started the podcast, we started off as a pop culture podcast, just talking about celebrity gossip and stuff like that. But as time went on, and especially with what's happening around the world right now with the coronavirus and all the heightened racism, we realized that it's really important to have Asian voices that talking about Asian social issues that directly affect Asian millennials specifically because there's really not many people talking about those sort of issues. So that's when we really knew that we had to do something and say something because we feel like Asian people in general, we get taught to not speak out, when it matters. So we want to break that mold and get people talking and start a discussion. And that's when, that's why we're doing, Asian social issues and stuff that are related to our audience. And we get lots of feedback from people who listen, and they love it when we talk about these issues.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to hear because even, when I listen and then, there are times where I hear stuff and I'm like, I didn't really think about that. Like, in particular, when the episode when you guys were talking about where you had emphasis of racism and how it was kind of like, people just kind of like minimized it as in like, oh, this is not that serious. And given it time, no one really talked about it like that.
100%, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we definitely, I think, we grow up not knowing what racism means because we're so used to it. So
we're so desensitized, and we just normally kind of put it off to the point where it takes a pandemic to fight back.
Yeah. So we want to, with the voices that we have, we want to educate people. We want to share those things to make sure that they're aware that it's okay to feel angry about, these things.
And I think that's why, especially during this time, I think Living is doing great work, and I was really proud to see you guys talking about this. And I hope people go back and listen to a lot of those, older interviews too as well. There was a lot of good stuff.
Thank you.
Especially like the one with Dan, that was a really deep interview.
Yeah.
All right. So what are 3 words that you would use to describe the Women Podcast?
Tom, you go. I think Tom knows how to sum this up.
I think 3 words is obviously Asian.
Yeah, Asian.
Fun, like giggles and fun. And I think the last one will probably be like shady.
Yeah, we're not afraid to call people out. But we also, we want, when we deep dive into these topics, we want to make it, we want it to be easily digestible. So I guess that's why it's giggles and funs. Asian because I guess like it's Asian.
We're Asian.
Yeah, and then one word that was left out that I would have put would be real and honest, but but just like what you guys just said, you're not afraid to call people out, and that's a big part of being real.
Well, thanks. I like that. Real,
yeah.
Yeah, because it's like in entertainment, it's like you have a lot of people out there that are just gonna, say what people want to hear, but what's on the Women Podcast is unfiltered, that's the truth, and I would say that's the biggest thing that I like about Stop the Show. That, and I do find you guys very entertaining.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right, so moving back into racism, have you experienced any racism during the pandemic?
We definitely have. Not as bad as other people that we know of, but even with the podcast, for example, we receive, comments, people commenting on that, saying really like racist things. Like we had someone comment saying that we should go eat bats or something like that.
And not a very nice thing to say.
Yeah, so it was really funny because we decided to call him out on that, and we didn't delete that comment, did we?
Yeah,
we left it there because we were like, if he's going to be confident to post this on such a public forum, then we're just going to leave it there for him, for people to see what he's saying. But we did call him out on it, and yeah, hopefully he realizes that it's racist and it's not okay to say that.
And it's even not online, in person too. Like we have people tell us that we're not allowed to come back into the shops because they think that we're buying something or hoarding.
Especially in the earlier days of COVID, before it really like broke out. And it was only in China. People were always like, would give us weird looks.
You can't cough on public transport because they think you're dirty.
Do you remember that time when you went to the supermarket and then you had a little cough and the little girl just looked at you and her mom like pulled it away?
No, what happened was, I just cleared to clear my throat, right? And then the mom looked at me, and then like obviously the daughter got a little bit anxious. But when I walked past them, the little girl she did this, and she held her breath, like her cheeks puffed up, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, definitely lots of that, that casual racism, that I guess like a lot of people of color, experience. But yeah, with the whole pandemic, it's a lot more obvious and it's a lot more frequent. But yeah, definitely.
That reminds me too, and I did like that episode where you guys went over like Asian culture in terms of hygiene, to like combat it, or no, it was a meta episode too. I forget which one, but I remember you said, that they shouldn't be generalizing, and saying, oh, Asian people eat bats, and that,
Yes.
like it's a rarity, and that every culture, eats this weird things. And I'm like, well, that's true.
Yeah, it's like in Australia, there are people who eat kangaroo meat, and I find that really gross. I'm like personally, I don't eat kangaroo meat, and I'm not gonna hate people who eat kangaroo meat, but I just personally find that gross. But I would not go out and say to every person who I think would generalize stereotypically would be eating kangaroo meat to say you should go eat kangaroo meat, and just say those sort of remarks to people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but every culture has. And every culture in every country has that weird exotic dish that not everyone agrees with. And I think, some might be worse than others, but you shouldn't say a group, like, for example, Asian people all eat bats, because not all Asian people eat bats. And then it's just like a small group of people. So, yeah.
Right. And it's like, we have people here who, I believe, eat snakes and,
Yeah, you have people who keep exotic animals in cages.
Are you talking about Tiger King?
Tiger King.
Yeah,
cool.
I heard a story of someone had an alligator in his pub.
Oh, in Australia?
No, here.
Oh,
His friend had, I guess, a bunch of weird animals. He was like, I went to use the bathroom, and he was like, I go in there, and it's just sitting right there. And
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Scary.
That's scary.
We had that in Australia too, but we have snakes in toilets, but it's not purposely done. It's like...
They come out of the toilets.
So you have to be careful.
Yeah.
You flush before you use.
Or sometimes there'll be like frogs under the toilet seat.
Yeah.
So, but that's just Australia.
That's Australia.
Yeah.
All right, so continuing on with this subject, do you guys feel that the coronavirus has created a moment to kind of actually really realize and start taking serious anti-Asian racism?
Absolutely. I think I touched on this earlier. It takes a whole pandemic for people to actually rise up. Usually in the Asian culture, we're very passive people. Like, we don't talk back. If people yell at us, we go, yes, I understand. Like, we're not a very assertive race, and most of the time because we're just so grateful for everything, the opportunities that we get to come to a land that's so free, with all the opportunities, that we're just so thankful for it. But then it comes to a point where if people are being hurt because physically, emotionally, or, something just happens, it comes to a time where you just have to step up.
Yeah. And I think, by a lot of people calling it out now, and I think in America, what's happening in America as well, we have such a powerful device in our hands, the mobile phone, and it's great that we can catch this all on film and on camera now, because now we can post it and show what racism looks like, and show it to people who are, might be doing it and might not be realizing it, and so I think having that piece of technology in our hands is like our own weapon. That's
and Twitter,
figuratively speaking, of course. But yeah, and Twitter, of course. But yeah, having that sort of technology and having the space to share those sort of things, hopefully, as years go by, we'll see less cases of this.
Yeah, and hopefully, I feel that with more Asian representation, that will help as well, and bring in, and start addressing all of this. And again, going back to the damn interview, I remember she brought up Crazy Rich Asians, and I just think, because I always think back to the scene in the beginning where, they faced that, and I think that was kind of a moment for a lot of people where I think that kind of put that in their mind. So
yeah. Now, Crazy Rich Asian was a very, I guess, big moment for Asians around the world. And I think to a lot of people who aren't Asian, it was just another film. But for us to see people like us on the big screen, I think I got a bit emotional, actually.
Really?
Yeah, watching that movie, I'm just like, wow, this is the number one move in the world right now, and there are people who look like us.
Which is why representation is so important. Whichever
Yeah.
film, it could be Asian, it could be African American. Like even Black Panther was a monumental film,
Mm-hmm.
not because it's Marvel or superhero film, but because of representation. People are hiring people of color and not Scarlett Johansson to play, I don't know, an Asian or a black person.
Yeah. But yeah, this week in Australia, we just spoke about this on the podcast recording, and we did this morning. But in Australia this week on MasterChef, which is like the number one TV show in Australia right now, it gets like mega blockbuster ratings at the moment. But this week they did an episode of childhood memories, and all the contestants got to cook up something from their childhood. But we got to hear a lot of stories from Asian Australians who are on the show, talking about, you know, how their family immigrated from different countries and how they were refugees and stuff like that. And that was a really momentous moment for everyone in Australia, because as someone who doesn't know anyone that is an immigrant or a refugee, they got an insight into what everyday life was like for the other parts of Australia that no one talks about. But yeah, having that representation is so important. And a lot of our friends were talking about on social media because they were just so emotional seeing themselves being represented on TV and mainstream media.
Yeah, and I do feel like what you said with Black Panther. That's exactly how I felt about it. And Crazy Rich Asians, I remember I saw it in theaters, and I really loved watching it. And and I did feel, it was more than just a movie. And it's always great seeing that.
100%.
Absolutely.
All right, so have you guys received any messages or feedback from any of your listeners that really resonated with you or that you really appreciated?
Yeah, 100%. We get messages from people all the time, and they're always like Asians.
Asian, they're really nice.
Yeah, so initially when we started the podcast, we were trying to be very broad. We didn't know who would be listening to us, so we were very broad. But as months went by and we did more episodes, a lot of Asian people would reach out to us saying, "Wow, this is so relatable, and I can't believe this is not being talked about anywhere." And a lot of them are just very, very, I guess, like appreciative that there is someone there to help them digest how they feel, because most of the time, like we said earlier, Asian people don't really talk about their feelings or express the issues that they're going through. So to have, people like we're only two people, and we hope that there's more people out there doing this sort of thing, because we need to have these discussions. They're so important. But yeah, we do have a lot of people reaching out saying that it's so great to see that these discussions are being had, because they don't have that discussion on mainstream media.
And we also had not even just about Asian stuff too. Like I've had someone reach out regarding dentistry, and she wanted to start her own podcast. And her story was that she injured her back, so she couldn't practice dentistry anymore, and she was looking kind of out gateways on if she can do anything else. And then I don't know how she found about my story about me leaving dentistry to go do music.
Yeah,
but it's just weird how we just don't know that the stories that we're telling, that how much it can resonate with other people as well.
Yeah, and actually, a few weeks ago, there was two Asian girls who were beat up in the city in Melbourne here, and we reshared the video on our social media, and it went completely viral. And because I don't know if it's because of our video, like because we reshared it or whatever, but
the deputy mayor's wife did contact us.
Yeah, but the deputy mayor of the city, he contacted us saying that because he saw the video from our profile, he reached out to the police in the city to investigate it further, and then they caught them the next day.
But she went on a bail, so.
But she got released on bail, of course. But yeah, I think stuff like that, like it doesn't take us much to talk about it or reshare a post or a video, but to see that it's actually having impact and is making a difference, it's just so rewarding, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, that the phone, social media is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. Because I always say, I'm like, with a lot of these cases where, police brutality or, with any of these.
100%.
Attacks, like, if there wouldn't be any kind of, arrest or charges pressed on, like, if there was no video. So I think it's really important, and especially in that case, because it got those girls caught. And, I think that was a very disgusting, horrible thing to watch. And
absolutely.
all right, and let's segue into Thomas. Can you?
Hi.
Yeah, this is not a attack question or anything, but I just wanted to know about your music career.
So, just with music, I am a songwriter, producer. I haven't had anything published just yet, but that's kind of the goal. Like, I want to be somebody in the music industry that can write music, who can produce music. I'm currently working with a few producers, programmers, and songwriters as well in Australia, one in the UK as well. And I guess my goal is just to make it. Yeah, it's like one of those Hollywood dreams.
This is how Asian he is. Like, his stuff is really amazing, and I've heard his stuff. And the people that he's working with, they're like big industry names. And and he doesn't want us to say it because he's too humble to say it. But there are a few big names that he's working with, and they're just projects at the moment. They're not like confirmed, like they can be released or anything. But for him to be able to be working with industry, giants, it's such a big achievement. He doesn't talk much about that.
Oh, thanks. Because I'm just scared that if I talk it too big, like the higher you talk it up, the bigger you're gonna fall, right? Just better just to give like a low estimate and then impress everybody, I guess.
All right, so what inspires you with music?
What inspires me?
What producers and songwriters?
Oh, who inspires me?
Inspires you?
I love Max Martin. Everything that Max Martin does, he's a musical genius.
So Max Martin is the guy who wrote all of Britney Spears.
Britney, Kelly Clarkson, Kesha, Dr. Luke as well.
Dr. Luke, yeah.
Oh, but let's not go into Dr. Luke. That's another story. But I love Lady Gaga. I love Brian Lee as well, who is he's a Korean songwriter. He works closely with Teddy in Korea, and he wrote Havana, he wrote for Rita Ora, but he also wrote for Blackpink as well.
Oh yeah, he wrote for Blackpink as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so those are, I guess, who I look up to.
All right, and what would you call your genre of music, or like your style?
Pop, dark pop, candy pop. I guess pop in general. I love pop. Like, I love Blackpink. I love 21. I love Lady Gaga. I love Katy Perry, Carly Rae Jepsen. So just anything that's on the radio that is a earworm is something that I'd listen to.
All right, so I'm going to ask one more question. I really do love music, so yeah, a little bit of mistake. So who would be your dream collaboration?
I know the answer to this.
Probably Brian Lee.
I thought you were going to say Lady Gaga.
I mean, like, that would be great.
Yeah.
But I want to go in the head of like more so producers. Like, it'd be great to work with Lady Gaga and Blackpink, but not to dish Blackpink, but I don't think they have a lot of creative control of their music. So I want to work with somebody who like knows exactly what they're doing, like knows exactly what words to put, and just kind of dissect their heads and the reason why they use the words that they use. And I guess maybe like Max Martin, Brian Lee, and just learn how to make a hit.
Oh, nice. All right, so I'm going to ask Phillip a question now. All right, so you're doing Lemon. You already did Hello K-pop, and you're running your family shop, and so you've done so much. So young already. Do you feel that you've kind of accomplished all that you want, or is there a lot more to come?
That's a good question. Look, I'm the sort of person who loves to continue learning new things, and I feel like there is so much to learn, and I always looking for new things to learn. Like at the moment, I'm doing my master's in data science because I just want to continue learning and be in a space where I can learn new things. So there's so much more that I want to do still, and I think everything that I achieve is just surface, and there's so much more I can do still. Yeah. What are some things I would like to achieve?
Now, he dreams big. Like, he has massive goals.
Yeah, like sometimes when I tell people my dreams, it just seems so unrealistic, and you can tell when you're telling someone about your dreams that they're kind of like, not Tom obviously, but some other people that they don't think that you can do it, and they're like, oh wow, it's just out of reach. But I think it's so important to keep dreaming and have these goals, because they help you, develop and become a better person.
Thomas, after you hit where you want to with music, is there another goal that you would?
I guess if I do hit my goal with music, I guess then my next goal will be who I can get my music to. I guess because I guess I'm even though I got one foot in the industry door, at this point in time, it's music is going to whoever I'd want. But then if you get to a point where you do become quite reputable, I want to be like, I want this song to go to this person. I want Lady Gaga to sing the song. I want Rita Ora to sing the song.
I actually want to ask the readers and listeners, because Tom, when he was younger, he wanted to become a K-pop idol, and he has all the K-pop look, so he just needs a contract at this point. So, is anyone willing to offer him a contract?
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe you don't know whoever's listening.
Oh, exactly. YG could be listening to this right now.
I can write in Chinese if that makes any difference.
Well, should we pause the interview and you can start singing and doing things?
Yeah. Go ahead, go start singing.
Maybe another interview for that.
So, what makes Lemon special?
I think what makes Lemon special is actually the people. This is going to sound real cheesy, but it's actually the people who listen to us. And as cliche as that sounds, but I genuinely do mean it's not about us. It's actually about our listeners. Mm-hmm. Even though we're the guys who are speaking on the Lemon platform, the platform is actually for the viewers. And I think it's the audience, the people who listen to this, who can resonate with what we're trying to say. That is what makes Lemon special, is that we can tell a story and we can get our point of view across to people who can just relate with us.
Yeah, and also just to add on to that, I think what makes Lemon really special is that we get to hear so many great stories from Asian people and Asian, influencers and just people who tell their stories, and they're the stories that we don't get to hear in mainstream media. And Lemon is that place where we want to create a place where we can tell those stories. So that's what Lemon's special, I guess.
All right, so who are you guys' dream guests?
Tom, you want to go first?
Mine would be, I got two in mind.
Mm-hmm.
My first one would be community channel, Natalie Tran. She is a Sydney-based, she's what used to be like a massive YouTuber back in the day.
She was the original YouTube star.
Girl, yeah.
Like she was the most subscribed person in Australia.
And
she's also Asian Australian. But she's just loved by everyone in the Asian community.
I love her so much. Like if we get her onto the show, but she disappeared for a while. That'll be amazing. But another person, probably Lucy Liu, like someone who is like an A-lister in Hollywood who is Asian. Then we can be like, wow, like did you have a moment where like, people told you to do this just so you can get a movie, like just to hear her side of the story, because she's not really big on social media or very big spoke like vocally as well. So just to hear her stories would be quite interesting.
My dream interview, I definitely the two people that Tom mentioned, they are both of us. We both want to interview them. But I don't know. For me, that's a hard question.
I know who you would say.
Who?
You want CL.
Oh, actually, I would love to have CL on the show. CL from 21. I would love her. But yeah, her of course. But I think in general, what I love about doing Lemon is that we get to meet such interesting people and hear these stories and have these conversations. So I don't know, I don't want to be cheesy and cringy, but I just want to keep hearing more interesting stories just from everyday people, not just from celebrities and
does it have to be from the community as well?
Yeah.
It's like even just, drag queens that we've interviewed, people who of color, people who are not of color, who just the stories are just so niche and very.
We don't just interview Asian people only. We interview everyone.
Who are some of your favorite guests that you had on the show?
Oh, we just did an interview with a music therapist for last week's episode, and we talked about internalized racism, and that was such an eye-opening conversation to have, because I think a lot of us grew up with, internalizing racism and we just don't realize it. So for example, I know people my Asian friends who only date white people because subconsciously they want to feel worthier because they don't like being Asian. And then I also know friends who have gotten surgery because they didn't like looking too Asian. And me personally, one of the things that I realized that I dealt with growing up was that I found it really hard to talk to Caucasian people because growing up I was never surrounded by Caucasian people and I never felt like they would want to talk to me.
It's like you're not worthy enough.
Yeah. So having that conversation with Asami, who we interviewed last week, was really eye-opening, and that was probably like one of my favorite chats to have. Tom, what was some other interviews we've done?
I obviously have to say all, but there is one person who, Sarah Rav, so she is a social media influencer content creator, and she, in her past, she's been quite open about talking about her battle with eating disorder with anorexia nervosa. So when we had her on the show, like the questions that we asked her were so deep, but she just answered them. Like she was so open about it. And the reason why I loved having her, why that was one of my favorite, is because of how she wasn't calculated with her answers. Like it was like it was real. It was so real.
There was no filter in that interview.
No
she was
filter.
happy to talk about anything.
Where as we have other people on the show, sometimes it's quite hard to get them to open up as well. But Sarah Rav was absolutely beautiful.
So what is next for Lemon?
Next for Lemon, I think we did have a. It's interesting. We had a discussion about this the other week, and as I mentioned earlier, when we started, we were being very broad and we were just talking about pop culture. But during the last few months, it's been really clear to us that we need to have these conversations about social issues that affect Asian millennials because they're issues that we're both passionate about as well, and that we can actually see that we're making a difference in the space. So we definitely want to continue doing that. But yeah, on the show, we want to keep hearing these everyday stories from amazing people so that they can share their stories as well. So I think that's what's next for Lemon. Anything you want to add?
No, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, summarized pretty well.
All right, so last question. How was it being on the other end of interviewing?
So it was actually quite hard, actually quite tricky. Because when we're usually asking the questions, like even like being interviewed, I feel like I want to ask you a question back and I have to bite my tongue. Like I remember I asked you 2 questions, but I was like, oh no, I can't ask you. Like this is about interview for us. But I'm in the habit of when I talk to people, I want to get to know them as well. So that was the hard thing for me.
Yeah, I think because we've interviewed people before, we kind of like consciously know what we have, like what's expected, and which I don't know. Like I think we want to be a great interview guest, I guess. So yeah, hopefully we were a great interview guests.
Well, and I hope and vice versa, I was a good interviewer. I've never done something like
100%.
You did an amazing job. You did an amazing job.
Oh, that's good to hear. All right, so that wraps up the interview. And thank you to the people down at Kcrush America and to the reader.
Thanks for having us,
Thank you so
Kcrush.
much for having us.